It's remarkable how a life carefully constructed over the years can feel so fragile, how the bonds you once thought unbreakable can begin to strain under the weight of new desires and old tensions. Here I am in my mid-30s, living in what could best be described as a large, polyamorous family. Though family might be too simple a term for the intricate web of relationships we've woven. I'm not sure there's a standard word for what we have. People say it's unconventional, maybe even chaotic, but for a long time it worked. We've been together in some form for years, raising children, sharing finances, exchanging love in all its various shapes and colors. Let me set the scene. I'm a 35-year-old man who married Lori, my wife, 13 years ago. We met in college, young, idealistic, and open-minded enough to explore relationships beyond monogamy. We started as an open couple, gradually discovering that our concept of us could expand to include others. 8 years ago, we met Kyle and Andy, another couple like us. Open, adventurous, and friendly. We bonded quickly, spending evenings talking about philosophy, politics, and life goals, and nights tangling ourselves together in warm, intimate companionship. Eventually, children followed. Our household became a home to several kids, each loved by all of us, each product of a genetic roulette that only sometimes matched what we expected. We never planned to become so intertwined, but life had its own ideas. In 2012, Andy got pregnant, and after some calculations, we discovered I was likely the father of her new baby. By then, she already had a child with Kyle, and Lori had 2 children with me. To embrace this growing complexity, the 4 of us, me, Lori, Andy, and Kyle, held a commitment ceremony. It wasn't a legal marriage, more of a vow between us to form a family bound by love rather than tradition. We became a unit, all parents to all the children. No one would be left out, no child unloved or unsupported. Hovering at the edges of our world was Joseph, an old friend of Kyle's from college. Joseph's role had been, for the most part, a casual guest in our bed and in our home. He'd been part of Kyle and Andy's sexual adventures before we came into their lives, and after our commitment ceremony, he occasionally joined us for intimate encounters. His presence was never a problem at first. He was simply another thread in the tapestry of our love life, popping in and out without causing trouble. Then came another twist. Andy's baby turned out to be Joseph's, not mine. It was a surprise, but not a crisis. We loved all the children equally. Joseph became a more regular visitor, and though I never fully warmed to him, I tolerated it. He was part of the extended family, in a way, and father to one of Andy's children. His visits were intermittent until a year and a half ago when tragedy struck. Joseph had a serious motorcycle accident, lost his job, lost his apartment, needed months of rehabilitation. We took him in, initially as a temporary gesture of kindness. This was a household defined by love and compassion, after all. We offered shelter, assuming he'd move out once he got back on his feet. Time passed, and Joseph didn't leave. He integrated himself more deeply. Kyle was thrilled. His old friend around all the time. The women liked him, or at least enjoyed his company and the physical intimacy he provided. As for me, I struggled. I'd never really liked Joseph. He gave off a strange vibe. Something about him always seemed off, untrustworthy. He drank too much, made bigoted remarks now and then, and had a personality that grated on me. Still, I stayed quiet, wanting to be understanding, to avoid conflict. He was here temporarily, right? Months became a year, then more. I gritted my teeth, telling myself it was just temporary, that he'd leave soon, that once he got a stable job, he'd find his own place. But as he settled in, he seemed content to remain indefinitely. The others didn't mind. They found his quirks endearing, or at least tolerable. The sex was good, they said. He helped with small tasks, played with the kids. My private dislike seemed small and petty compared to everyone else's acceptance. So I swallowed my discomfort. Then, a few days ago, Lori told me she wanted to talk about something serious. We'd built a life with 6 kids under one roof, a colorful chaos but manageable. I thought we were done expanding our family. We never said it out loud, but given how hectic things were, who would want more children? Lori, apparently. She wants another baby, but not just any baby. She wants Joseph's baby. I felt my heart sink. Her logic was baffling. Andy had a child by each of us, Kyle, me, and Joseph. So, Lori said it was only fair she do the same, to give Joseph a child of her own. Fairness? Babies aren't bargaining chips. Yet she argued that since Andy's children collectively represented all 3 men, Lori wanted the same. She said Joseph felt left out, that he deserved the same consideration. My mind reeled at the childish notion that we should create a life to satisfy someone's ego. I have many problems with this. First, 6 kids is already a lot. The house is noisy, busy, expensive. Another child would stretch our resources further and intensify the chaos. Second, Joseph isn't part of the core commitment. He's never gone through a ceremony with us, never made the same vows. He's a guest who moved in due to misfortune, but never became an integral, fully committed family member. At least in my eyes. And finally, I just don't like him. I never have. He offends my sensibilities, makes me suspicious. He's not the kind of person I'd trust to be a father figure to my children, let alone father another child with my wife. The thought makes my stomach turn. When Lori said that it's only fair, and that Joseph had told her he felt left out, I wanted to scream. Is that how we make decisions now? By whoever feels left out? This isn't a party where everyone gets a slice of cake. This is a child's life. I asked Lori how she could even consider something so irreverent. She grew defensive, accusing me of not caring about her feelings, or Joseph's feelings, as though I should be sensitive to the man I never wanted living with us indefinitely. Kyle and Andy, to my shock, think it's a romantic idea. Romantic? To conceive a child to satisfy some notion of symmetry in our polydynamic? In that moment, sitting in the living room surrounded by these people I once adored, I realized I was furious beyond measure. Furious at Joseph for weaseling his way into permanence. Furious at Kyle and Andy for encouraging this. And furious at Lori for entertaining such a destructive idea. I tried to reason with them. I said we already have a full household, that I thought we were done having kids. They shrugged it off. I pointed out Joseph's flaws, but they said I was being judgmental and mean. The tension rose, and the conversation ended with no resolution, just simmering anger on my part. I felt like I had no options. If I refused Lori's plan, I might look controlling or jealous, threatening the harmony of our family. If I agreed, I'd be consigning myself to a life of quiet misery, watching Joseph grow roots in this family, guaranteed to never leave. If I tried to force him out, I'd be the villain who turned away a man recovering from a serious accident. Every route promised pain. I needed advice. I called a family meeting the next morning when Joseph was out, telling them we had to address the situation. I said I couldn't remain silent anymore. I told them about my discomfort, my dislike for Joseph, the feeling I'd always had that his presence was temporary. I reminded them of our original commitment ceremony and the rule that adding anyone to our family needed unanimous agreement. They looked at me with surprise, as if they never considered my feelings that important. Then, Kyle and Andy dropped a bombshell. They'd been talking with Lori about officially adding Joseph through a commitment ceremony, making him a permanent part of our household. They planned to bring it up today. My heart pounded. I said no, absolutely not. I reminded them of our agreement, unanimity is required, and I'd never consent. The 3 of them got upset, calling me selfish. They said they could hold a ceremony without me. I told them bluntly, if you do that, you're not adding him, you're replacing me. I can't stay if you do that. The words fell heavily into the silence. Their anger bubbled up, and we argued bitterly. Turning to Lori, I told her how much it hurt that she wanted Joseph's child, that it offended me to no end. I repeated that I saw this idea as not about love or family. but as appeasing Joseph's ego. She wept, calling me selfish and mean, saying she loved both of us and wouldn't choose. She admitted she gave Joseph her word and didn't want to go back on it. Then she offered a compromise. We could all try to conceive, and fate would choose the father. As if that were any better. I refused. I told her if she had Joseph's baby, it would break us irreparably. She cried more, calling me cruel, and I ended the discussion by stating my boundaries firmly. I would not raise another child in this scenario. The night ended in gloom. I went to work the next day, worried, expecting another war of words on my return. But when I got home, Joseph surprised me. He pulled me aside, asked to talk privately. I braced for confrontation. Instead, he apologized. He admitted we never got along and confessed he didn't want to cause more harm. He recognized how uncomfortable this baby plan made me and said he didn't want Lori stuck in the middle. He spoke of loving his child with Andy and wanting to remain close, but not at the cost of tearing the family apart. He proposed finding his own place nearby once he got a stable job. He said he'd still visit and be part of his child's life daily if possible. He offered to spend only a couple of nights a week with us so our family could have peace. And then he said he'd told Lori he no longer wanted a baby with her. He realized it was wrong to push that idea. I was stunned. The man I disliked so intensely was showing empathy and compromise. He said he'd rather keep the family stable than force his way in as a permanent partner. We shook hands, and for the first time, I didn't feel like punching him. That evening, Lori and I talked softly in our room. She apologized through tears, admitting she'd been swept up in a fantasy and not considering my feelings fully. We held each other for the first time in what felt like forever. She admitted the idea of one more baby still lingered in her heart, but acknowledged that forcing Joseph's involvement was a mistake. She wanted a break from these heavy discussions, asked if we could talk later once emotions had cooled. Meanwhile, Andy remains angry at me, furious that I disrupted the harmony and dashed her hopes of adding Joseph permanently. She feels I'm making her choose between two men she loves. But I'm patient. I know she's hurt. Maybe in time, she'll see it wasn't all my fault. Kyle is remorseful. He didn't address my discomfort earlier. He feels caught in the crossfire and regrets not checking in with me sooner. We shared a beer afterward, grateful that at least the crisis was easing. In the following days, Lori and I kept talking. She made it clear she still wants another baby eventually. Not now, not under these circumstances. I said I'm open to it in a year or so, and that I'd like to be the father if possible. She agreed. Joseph no longer pressures for a child and has started looking for a job. Once employed, he plans to get his own place a few blocks away. We'll still be a big, messy, polyamorous family, but with healthier boundaries. As the dust settles, I feel relief. The future is uncertain, but we steered clear of the worst outcomes. We reaffirmed core principles: unanimity in major decisions, honest communication, and no using babies to cement relationships. It's far from perfect. We'll keep working in therapy, keep talking, and maybe rediscover what made our family so special. At least now I know that everyone hears me, respects my limits, and acknowledges my discomfort. I still don't love Joseph, probably never will, but I can tolerate him as a friend of the family, a father to one of our collective children, an occasional presence who no longer looms as a permanent fixture. Lori seems calmer, relieved that we didn't tear the family apart. Andy's anger might fade with time, and Kyle stands ready to help bridge the gaps. I realize now that this giant family, this poly tribe as some call it, is always evolving. Mistakes will happen, feelings will clash, but if we listen to each other and stay true to our agreements, we can weather these storms. I'm hopeful that we can move forward with love, respect, and just enough boundaries to keep everyone feeling safe and valued. And if we do have another baby someday, I'll be glad it happened out of genuine love and mutual agreement, not out of forced fairness or ego. I won't settle for less, and that's how we keep growing together, one step at a time. even in a relationship as unconventional and complex as ours.